We're all desirous of living in a better world. But let's face it, the world is just a space that we occupy. Many people are hurting as we're all living through a global mental health crisis that got even worse after the COVID-19 pandemic. For things to get better, we all have to take responsibility for what is going on in our minds. Healthy equals happy.
Hey guys, it's your girl Basia, and you know what's up? Today's Tuesday, so it's time for Ask Basia video podcast. Today we're discussing the global mental health crisis affecting women. Most times people are reluctant to accept that something is not right with their state of mind. Perhaps it's because we're very quick to attach labels to people who are brave enough to seek help for mental issues. So many organizations are hiring very qualified professionals who are in a lot of emotional and mental pain. It is very important that mental health becomes a priority in the workplace. If organizations are prioritizing head of diversity and head of this, they also need to consider adding a head of mental and emotional health. In fact, happy, healthy equals happy. Today, I'm joined by some phenomenal queens. On the top right is our experts on our panel, mental health expert Dawn Townsend, MS, LPC, NCC, a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia, and a national certified counselor. Dawn graduated with a 4.0 from Mercer University, obtaining a Master of Science in Community Counseling, and graduated in the top 10 of her class, summa cum laude, from Spelman College, receiving a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. Her knowledge is vast, having more than 15 years of clinical experience in working with children, adolescents, and adults from diverse populations. She currently works as a COO, Vice President of Hopeful Change LLC. She's a psychotherapist in the group practice and a clinical compliance specialist and behavioral assessment and mental health evaluation manager for a local mental health agency. When she's not hard at work, serving in the capacity of therapist, you'll find her serving her family and her surrounding communities. I'm also joined again by none other than Leslie Ann Bailey, Trinidadian American. Leslie Ann is an occupational therapist, entrepreneur, and a graduate from Howard University. She's based in Washington, D.C. And I want to say a special welcome back to Mrs. Alana Avis. Alana was raised in Montreal, Quebec by Trinidadian parents. She's a cybersecurity risk executive and fitness enthusiast who loves a good effortless fashion moment. Currently, she's also venturing into entrepreneurship, building an e-commerce brand rooted in wellness. She's based in Atlanta, Georgia. Ladies, welcome back. That's a private joke. Before we get into it, I want to remind our viewers and our listeners that the Ask Basia podcast is available on iTunes and Spotify, and the video version is available exclusively on basiapowell.com and YouTube/Basia Powell. Are you ready, ladies?
Yes.
On the marks, get set, let's go. Let me tell you something. I was very excited about today's topic because I wish people of color in particular would prioritize their mental health. Women of color in particular, we're the last to seek help. We would find solutions for everybody in our family. We'll take care of everybody first, but we put ourselves last. And, you know, your brain is a part of your body. Newsflash. You have a headache, you have your feet not feeling right, you have a backache, you go to a doctor. So if your head not feeling right, you go to a therapist. You know, it's just in my head, in my mind, this is normal, but it's not normal for a lot of people, particularly in communities of color. Dawn Townsend, you are the expert, and I'm starting with you. Why is mental health not such a priority? Why is there a negative stigma attached to mental health in communities of color in particular?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think first it's important to understand that people fear what they don't understand, and so often in our communities, mental health is viewed as a stigma because of what is linked to mental health, right? So in our communities, we've always been told to keep things on the hush hush or keep them quiet, or what happens in our house stays in our house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's kind of how we've been raised. That's kind of how we've grown up. We have also been told to, you should pray more or you should go to church more. That's been something that we've heard a lot of times. But
Yeah.
what people don't understand is that, as it says in the Bible, as I'm an advocate for God, I'll be the first
Mm-hmm.
person to talk about God and my love for Christ,
Me
and the
too.
power, right, of Jesus. But in the Bible, it states faith without works is dead. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't put in the work to manage our mental health, there's no way for us to get better. So it's important that we prioritize it and that we understand what it's really about, that our mental health is really about our mental wellness.
And I like that word, mental wellness. Thank you for introducing that word, because that's how I feel about it. But I've just not expressed it that way. Let me just say, this last year has been like a tornado. We didn't see this tornado coming, this
Right.
pandemic. Nobody, not even our grandparents. So this was not something we could have imagined. If I had a movie to write, if I had a show to create, I couldn't come up with a script. And it came, a lot of us, myself included, I felt mentally trapped. All my creativity left my body. I knew I had to do something real quick. So I took a personal decision to go to therapy. I also knew that there are a lot of people who were feeling like me. It's just that they weren't brave enough to admit it. But I knew deep down inside, this didn't feel well. And I had to do something about it. So I went to therapy. I don't know what you're going to think about me. You could look at her and say, but she has it all together. Her life is lit. Yeah, and I want my life to continue being lit. So I
Absolutely.
realized that I had to go get some help. Am I broken? No, I've just been fixed. um, Dawn Townsend, I want to ask you though, how do we get people to understand that mental health issues does not equate to being crazy? Not because you need to see a therapist, it means that something is wrong with you. It means that something is wrong, but it doesn't mean that you're broken and that you're cuckoo. Because if you have heart disease, you go see a heart specialist,
That's right.
but you don't see yourself as broken. What's up with that? How do we get people to process this and say, hey, this is what's up. You're not cuckoo. You're not crazy. You're not inferior because you need to talk to what they like to call a shrink. You need to go see a shrink. That's not a bad word. How do we help our listeners and viewers to process that?
Yeah, I think the importance is really understanding that we have to provide our communities with resources and education. And
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, I think changing the narrative in reference to how we view what mental health really is. And like I said, I like to view mental health in reference to mental wellness, because a lot of times mental health is referred to as mental illness, right? And when we see that
Facts.
word ill, right, we think of problems. Ill is not associated with a good terminology. So when we hear that, it doesn't resonate good feelings or things that we want to associate with ourselves. So we avoid it, right? We remove ourselves from it. So instead of looking at mental wellness is a way for us to view it differently, for us to change our perspective, for us to change the narrative and how we relate to how we should take care of ourselves. Because mental health is a holistic thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times just people try to box your brain and your mind into one secluded area, but really it's about our whole body. It's about our mind, our body, our spirit, and our soul, and how they're intertwined, because they're all connected.
Correct. Leslie, and I want to start with you. We both grew up in the Caribbean, and I always felt growing up in the Caribbean, there's a stigma attached back then. That is a stigma attached to going to get help, going to a therapist. This idea that you don't want people to know your business. That's what we heard growing up. You need to keep a stiff upper lip, and you need to hold it together. And I want to say that now that I'm wiser I'm more evolved and more exposed, I can see that there are many people from our culture who can be experiencing a lot of trauma right now, because that we were taught to bottle everything up, stay composed,
Yeah.
look pretty, walk out there and keep it all together. Don't talk my business on the streets. Was that your experience? Because that was mine.
That was my experience as well. It was deemed to be a taboo to even, discuss anything that's related to your mental health or mental illness. And, there's some negative terms that we use for individuals who we deem to be mentally ill. And, those terms they're just not appropriate. So yeah, as I was exposed, I realized that it was important to take care of my own mental health and to make sure that I was well. So, I kind of gave up that, that that way of thinking that we grew up with.
Me too.
At an early stage. I realized that it wasn't effective and it wasn't going to help me as, as I was, experiencing things in life and, trying to grow professionally as well.
Yeah. Before I get to Alana Avis, I want to also mention, like, for me, the way I see it now is, as I said, I see it from a wellness perspective, even though I've never said it like that. So I like that whole phrase. I'm now going to use mental wellness instead of mental illness. I now feel as though I'm going to do the same thing I do with my regular facials and have regular check-ins with my therapist, because I felt, well, I should say, when I was finished, I felt like I was thirsty for years. I was in this desert and I had a big glass of water. And you know how you feel when you're dehydrated and you finally get a cup of water? That's how I felt. And that's when I know that I did the right thing for me. Because you can't, watch that person who seems to be holding it all together. Because perfection does not exist. You hear me? You feel me? And the ones who appear to be holding it together the most are the ones who are waiting to exhale or ready to explode.
It's true.
Facts. That's what I learned, because I was ready to explode. Everything became too much. You call me to, I can't do all of this. I'm like, simple things. I'm like, so that was my experience. I feel that we all need therapy. Don't single out those who something is happening to them. The person who's getting the signal is luckier than you, because we all get signals. Some of us choose to ignore it. How do you feel about that, Alana Avis?
I agree. We all get signals. I think it's very important to be self-aware. Like what you said, you have to understand what's happening with you. We like to do a lot of retail therapy, or say I'm going to make myself look cute to kind of camouflage or really, what's the word? Hide how you're really feeling, that it's really you need to talk to somebody, and then it becomes unchecked, and it goes unchecked, and then you either you explode or you depressed, etc. So I do think it's important for people to be in tune with themselves, and listen to yourself and get the help that you need. Like for me, it's not very taboo. My mother's a registered nurse, was for 40 50 years. So for me, that topic in the house was very standard. Are you doing okay? How's your mental, etc.? And my mother was an advocate for it first. So for me and my sister growing up, we always were in tune with that. So yeah.
I feel like there's something else you want to tell us that you're not telling us, but as we go along,
yes, I'll tell you.
You tell me. I mean, I have admitted to having therapy, and let me tell you all something. When you see me coming, just know that the girl that you see before you is well put together, because I've been mended and fixed and stitched up. The lady you had before, who was just masking all of that, well, she had issues, you see. But this girl here, she feeling ready. Yeah, that's my therapy. I'm ready. I'm fired up and ready to go. That's how I felt, because it's wellness. I feel now that I'm going to have regular check-ins. I'm going to have my therapist on speed dial and say, hey, I need an oil change. You see?
It's maintenance. That's right.
Yeah, that's how I mean, I might sound like I'm joking, but I'm dead serious.
Absolutely.
Because I've seen the benefits. Dawn Townsend, I feel like mental health is simply the key. Having had my own experience and my other friends, people in my inner circle, we all feel that way. No matter how qualified you are, if your mind ain't right, it's just ain't right.
That's right.
Ain't right. So this is how I feel. you just can't be effective. Is that correct? I mean, it starts there. If you're having trouble understanding why you would need a therapist, first understand that if your mind is not all together, you can't be the professional you say you are. Because here's the thing: a lot of people feel embarrassed. Hey, I'm a big doctor. I'm a big teacher. I'm a big occupational therapist. I'm a big businesswoman. I don't need therapy. Yes, because you're carrying a heavy load, so you might be the one who needs therapy. Shed some light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important for people to understand that therapy, has often been stigmatized in the past, that it's just for crazy people, right? And that's a statement I'm so tired of hearing, that I wish it would just cease to exist, right? Because we all know that therapy is for any and everybody. And I think a lot of times people fail to understand the real purpose of therapy and why it was designed. A major reason why I got into the field that I got into is because I wanted to help people utilize their most powerful resource. And our most powerful resource is our mind. And we fail to realize that on so many occasions, that we fail to prepare, we fail to be educated, we fail to get the resources that we need. And sometimes it's not due to our own experience, but it's because of what exists in society. So that's why I became part of the solution instead of the problem, because I wanted to help people deal with what was going on in their life. I think it's so vitally important that we understand our history, right? And for us, specifically communities of color, we have had to deal with so much trauma, generational trauma, historical trauma, things that have been no fault to our own. If you really think about it, if you take a minute to really stop and think about what happens to us in life when we have no control over something that we didn't ask for, something that we didn't request, something that we didn't pray for, that is trauma.
Wow.
Trauma hits all of
Wow.
us.
Say it again.
Trauma hits all of us. It does not have a name. It's not designed for you. It's not designed for me. It has no color. It impedes all of our lives without our control. And that is something that I find so vitally important about helping people, is getting to the root of their trauma, because that is something that people do not talk enough about.
Right.
Wow, that is some facts. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I discovered in my own experience with therapy a couple months ago, during the time of COVID, I felt my creativity leave my body. And if you know me, my mind, and that's why I agree with you, my mind, that's my office.
Absolutely.
If I don't have my mind, I can't make money. Okay?
That's right.
As a businesswoman, my mind has to be on all fours. Elevator has to be stopping on all floors. So if I'm overloaded and it's not functioning right, I know that's an alarm. It's the sounding of an alarm, and I waited too long and the alarm went off. And my thing is, I then realized that, hey, something is not right. I went for therapy, but I didn't go for therapy because I wanted to, I didn't experience major depression yet, because I was being proactive.
Right.
Having had that experience, now I know, hey, why wait until then? This is going to be a regular checkup for me, like changing the oil in my car. This is going to be a regular checkup for me. I have to check in with myself.
That's right.
To be more effective, to be that whole person that I want to be. Just like when my nail chip, I run to the nail store. I don't wait until the whole nail peel off. Nail chip is just, and as I said before, I recognized that I was holding it all together, and that don't work.
Only for so long.
Only for so long. And the expert is here to tell you that. Well, I didn't know that because I'm not an expert. But one of the things I wanted to ask you as well is that, as a therapist, do you seek therapy as well? Because this has been a year like no other.
Yes, and I think it's that's a very important question. I'll share a brief story. As part of my graduate program, we were required to actually attend therapy. And the reason why they made us do this is because they wanted us to be able to understand the therapeutic process from the client's perspective. And it was transformative. It changed my life in a way that you wouldn't be able to believe. And it was really necessary for me to deal with my own stuff. You know, they call it your own stuff, your own baggage, right? If you will. And it was important that I understand where I was coming from and who I was as a person before I started affecting and infecting other people's lives. Because to be quite honest, the therapeutic relationship is a real relationship. You get involved with people's lives. And I've had to deal with some very heavy things, especially since COVID has started. You know, I have seen the gamut of things in relation to therapy, from small child, and you're talking about 4 years old, to the adult population dealing with like a 65-year-old. But when you're talking about the pandemic and you're talking about the seriousness and the severity of diagnoses that are occurring with anxiety and depression and grief and loss and trauma, I mean, this is heavy stuff.
Heavy.
So
It is.
when you get with a therapist, you want to make sure that this is somebody that you trust with your life, because it is work, ladies. Like, let's be honest. Therapy is work. It's not for the faint at heart. You really have to be ready to put in the work to be able to make the effective changes that you want to see in your own life.
And to be a better version of yourself, because that's what I wanted, to be a better version of myself. And it helped me. One of the things I also discovered in my therapy journey was that the pandemic was not the cause of my anxiety, of my issues. It was the trigger. You know, I was always a jet setter, and I really didn't have time to process anything for most of my life. You know, I was just, you know, like how they say, go get it, girl. That was my mindset. I was on the grind. You know, I also felt, I'm not proud to admit this, I felt that the more successful I became, that would solve whatever trauma which I didn't identify with until therapy. That would make everything right. So the more successful I became, the further removed I would be from whatever trauma that I put in the Pandora box. You know, does that make sense to you, Dawn?
Absolutely.
So I discovered that, hey, don't blame COVID for the problems, for the trauma. Thank COVID for allowing you to deal with the trauma so that you can become a better version of yourself. How about that?
Right. That's right.
That's where insight comes in. Yeah, she had the insight to be able to, you know, step back and process things. And, you know, sometimes we just, you know, we're moving so quickly, we just can't sit back and
I didn't know I had anything to
information.
process, to be honest, guys. I didn't really know, because I'm very open-minded to therapy. Very.
Yes.
Right.
But what led me straight through the door was the level that the anxiety had gotten to. And that's why I knew that the pandemic was a major trigger. And I guess I have to say thank you to that trigger, you know?
I personally haven't found a therapist that I love. So I agree and totally advocate for having a therapist. And my small and large circle, men and women, have therapists. I'm happy to report, but I've tried one or two, and I just have not made. Maybe I'm making excuses. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I feel.
Talk the truth and shame the devil, because I wanted to just send you a DM right now and say, hey, you're making excuses. Like, why you need to love your therapist? No. Your therapist is not a personal relationship.
Have a good relationship with the therapist. So I'm just like,
but you
for
have
a
to
lack of
start.
better words, we didn't vibe.
Right.
So if I'm not open, or if I'm not comfortable to really express or share, or I'm not receiving the information for that person the right way, it wasn't valuable. So for me, it didn't work out. But I'm going to do my homework, and I'm going to continue to look, because you have a great one. My girlfriend, my other guy friend just told me he has a great one. So I do need it.
Maybe I should let Dawn Townsend assist you in the approach to finding a good therapist.
Finding the right one?
Yeah, because for me, I wasn't trying to love my therapist. I was trying to get help to process.
And I agree with that. So, and to Dawn, maybe you can help me offline or whatever, but it's not about loving the person. But if I'm not even willing to, and this is coming from a person who's aware already of themselves and the need for it, is not willing to open up to that person, like I don't feel safe.
Absolutely.
I can't do the work.
Absolutely. I mean, Miss Alana, you're hitting the nail on the head. Honestly, it is very, very important that you find somebody that you mesh well with. Your therapist it is a relationship like no other. No, your therapist is not your parent. Your therapist is not your homegirl. That's not the purpose of the relationship, because you have to be able to trust the information that's coming from this individual, and you have to be able to be open to receiving it, like you were
Right.
saying. So if you don't feel like it's a safe space, because that is like the number one rule in therapy, it's a safe space, a non-judgmental space, right? For us to be open, for us to be honest and transparent about what's going on with us. Because like I tell every client that I've ever seen in my entire life, I can't help you if you don't allow me to help you. If you tell me that your heart hurts, right? And it's really your elbow. Well, if I'm helping you work on your heart and it's your elbow, and we've been doing all of this terrible work because it's not your heart, but it's your elbow, well, you're going to look at me like I'm not doing my job,
That's
right?
true.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Right.
That's right. That's
The
so
work
true.
has to be honest. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for me, my experience is that I saw a wonderful therapist many years ago, not well before the pandemic. And I shared that I will walk in the door. I could not wait to get there.
Oh,
And I'm pretty much a person who I wouldn't open up to many people. And I
yeah.
walk in the door crying and talking and crying and talking, and I wouldn't stop talking. And then, you know, I would hate for the session to end because
Oh,
it was just so effective. So I do understand the importance of it. I understand the importance of the work. I understand the importance of
Absolutely.
continuing the work, never stopping, if at all possible. So I could see your perspective. I could see your
yeah.
perspective, Alana.
I'm
You
going
know,
to try. I'm
yeah.
not giving up.
Yes,
You know,
keep trying.
you
Don't.
know what I have discovered, and again, I'm not an expert. This is just my own experience with people who are therapist shy, not in theory, but in actual practice. They normally have an informal therapist, because I'll tell you why. I have a few girlfriends and other people I know who not they, I don't know if they believe in therapy, but they definitely believe in offloading, because everybody needs to offload.
Yeah.
Am
Absolutely.
I talking the truth,
Yes.
Dawn
Yeah.
Townsend?
Yes,
But is
absolutely.
offloading good? Is offloading good?
Well, offloading for me, this is me talking as a professional now, not an expert.
Yeah.
Um, Offloading is only good if you're offloading to the right people who can give you the right direction. Now, if you are not offloading to somebody who's an expert in your broken matters, then that's a waste of your time.
Right. I just want to make sure. I mean, I offload too. I want to make sure it was
Everybody
okay
has to offload. But for matters such as that, like I have people in my inner circle that I offload to, but they would not have been able to connect the dots and tell me where my trauma started from. They don't know about those things.
Right.
You feel me?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's my
Absolutely.
point. Not that you can't confide in a girlfriend here and there. That's different from getting help.
Right.
Your girlfriend don't know anything about trauma.
Right.
Very true.
Except
You
for
know?
maybe what she's
Or maybe she
experienced.
does.
Right.
Yes.
No,
Right.
she
Yes.
know what trauma feels like, but she don't know how to
Absolutely.
fix trauma.
Absolutely.
So when you find yourself in relationships that are resulting in constant offloading, maybe some of these people need to be advised that, hey, whilst I am happy to listen, I want to steer you in the right direction where you can
That's
get
right.
actual help.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's how we can play our role there.
Okay.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Because what I have also discovered, and I want to ask Dawn about this, the anxiety levels. Let me tell you that I have never felt anxiety at that level. As I said, my creativity left my body. But it was clear to me that anxiety is like one of the first signals that, hey, time for some help. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We all suffer from varying levels of anxiety on a day-to-day basis, right? And as with stress, a certain amount of anxiety is healthy for us, right? It's normal. But when you start getting in the unmanageable levels of anxiety to where, it's causing physiological effects or physical symptoms, it's problematic. If you're noticing that your heart is racing all the time, or you feel like you have pressure in your chest, or you're clenching your jaw when you're sleeping at night, or, those are signs of anxiety, whether we really recognize it or not. But that is our body letting us know that, hey, something is wrong, something is not right here.
Yeah.
And since the pandemic, you know, the numbers have been astonishing, right? So I've been doing some fact checking, and I want to share some of our facts so we can kind of really understand where we are at since the pandemic started. This was a study that was done in July 2020, right? So this was after the pandemic had started. We were a few months into it. And these are specifically for anxiety and depressive disorders, right? So from this particular study from Kaiser Family Foundation and Kaiser Health News, it reported that 4 in 10 adults in the US have reported symptoms of anxiety and depressive disorder, which is up from 1 in 10 adults who reported from January to June of 2019.
Wow.
So just the year prior, before the pandemic started, you're talking about from a 10 to 11% to a 40%, which is 30% increase of anxiety and depressive disorders.
Wow.
That is astronomical.
That's a pandemic in itself, a mental
Absolutely.
pandemic. Yo, that is crazy.
Absolutely.
Oh, pardon the reference, but that is crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, and it goes without saying that it is a global crisis. You know, you're talking about a mental health crisis that we really need to be in tune with, and we really need to continue to seek out ways that we can manage this and that we can utilize the resources that we have and educate ourselves in ways that we haven't before. You know, everybody is talking about mental health at this point. It's everywhere because of everything that's going on.
It's everybody's problem.
Absolutely.
I was going to make the point that, you know, and I'm sure you would have seen a spike in your clientele and yourself and your colleagues.
Yeah.
I mean, because people need to process this.
Absolutely.
Even if you never had trauma, which is rare, this has been traumatic.
Yes.
Just think about it. Even if you never had trauma, you're coming from a place where you're unlike me, you never had trauma. This is traumatic. You know,
Absolutely.
and so now for those who are unwilling to admit it, you really have no choice. I am here to tell you that what I've discovered in this process of this past year is that we're all broken at some level.
That's right.
We're all broken.
That's right.
Even if you're broken from this, you know, as I said, I used to feel as though the more successful I become, I don't have to think about broken. We're talking about another type of broken, and money don't fix all your trauma or your problems or your feelings, as we know. I mean, rich people got problems too. And you look at them and say, well, why you have a problem? Because money is not everything. Right. At the end of the day, if this not right, things ain't tight.
That's right.
Before I had left this other job that I had, when I, like to your point, you're saying once you're successful, you're making money, everything is good. So then I left this job, and this is in that job when I really started to, in a real way, understand that I needed I needed to talk to somebody. So I left this job, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I was so happy, but I had such an identity crisis. I was like battling myself in my head every day for 2 years. Like, I'm good, I'm not good enough. I'm good on what, could I have done this? Could I have done that? You know, and then bringing up my past, not my past, but my childhood. I had a very good childhood, but being, you know, different, having to learn French. My parents couldn't learn French. Does this one like me? There's suntanning in Montreal, Quebec. Should I suntan too? Do I need to wear SPF? Like, I was just very confused on my identity, I guess. I have a lot of friends, a big social circle, like you said. People are like, she's on and popping. But myself, was having an identity crisis of who I am. And that's because so many years, who I was my job.
Yes, because that's where we go and find that identity. And I became my job, my brand.
Right, and then I didn't know. Although it looked good on the outside, internally I was battling myself. So that was kind of like the root. I mean, having the pandemic was a whole nother situation. Because then I didn't have an outlet. So in that situation, I have an outlet. I can still go here, there, get a job, go out. But then I have that plus the trauma. I have nowhere to go.
So what I hear you say is that you came from an excellent emotional place inside your house. The problem was outside your house.
Yeah.
When some of us had the trauma inside our houses, you know. So which goes to show that we all have something to fix.
Right.
And the thing that we put in the Pandora box, the thing that we think, well, I dealt with that because I'm so far removed from that.
Right.
You can run, but you can't hide.
That's right.
You feel me?
Yeah.
That's right.
Over to you, counselor.
Well, and I think you bring up a powerful point, because just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? And oftentimes that's what we do. We
Right.
push it away,
Mhm.
we hide it, we are in denial. We say that it doesn't exist when we know for a fact that it does. And really what happens is the longer you push it away, the more difficult it is to deal with it later, because you are going to have to deal with it at some point in life. Like there is no way that you can continue to matriculate through your life and not
No.
deal with the trauma and the issues that you've had in life in order to be effective, in order to be a better version of you, like you said earlier.
Motivation.
Absolutely. And I think that's important for us to really think about. You know, my husband and I have this saying with therapy and with counseling, that it's like a tree, right? So you have roots, you have the trunk, and then you have the branches, and you have the leaves, right? So that determines for me at what part in a person's development where we're going to start with a therapeutic process. Are they coming to me with leaf issues, leaf problems? Are they coming to me with trunk problems? Or are they coming to me with rooted problems? Is this a core issue that we really need to get to the bottom of? And oftentimes, what people don't realize is that their surface issues, you know, the leaf issues that I was talking about, is connected to that root issue, because that's where it comes from.
That's the anxiety. And where does the anxiety link to? You know? Where does the anxiety link to?
That's right. And that's when you brought up the conversation about triggers. That's what we talk about when we talk about those triggers, how we're triggered. And triggers are something, right? Because we can be triggered by so many different things that we don't even really think about. And as you were saying, Ms. Basia, this pandemic was a trigger for you in dealing with other issues that you were dealing with, right? But we can be triggered by music. We can be triggered by
Oh my gosh.
smell.
Yes.
We can be triggered by so many things. That's why I was talking about the holistic experience, because you're talking about your whole body and what happens with your entire body. So if you think about, for instance, in reference to a person that may have lost somebody, may have lost a family member or a spouse or somebody that was really close to them, and they smell a cologne or a perfume, you know, it takes them right back to that memory. That's a trigger for them. And it could be a trigger for happiness, or it could be a trigger for sadness.
I can so relate to that.
Yeah,
yes.
I can as well.
It could be a multitude of things. So
I can so relate to that.
Me
There's a
too.
reason that I'll talk about off air why I don't eat rum and raisins ice cream, and why it took me years to be able to consume red beans.
absolutely. It's a trigger.
And if I had linked that kind of trigger to a pandemic, I would have realized that my pandemic issue was not a pandemic issue.
That's right.
So I have to thank the pandemic for helping me to become a better version of myself.
That's for sure.
You know, and I wanted to say something based on what you said, Dawn Townsend. The things we don't talk about, those are the things that really bother us.
Oh,
absolutely.
And that's
Yes.
dangerous.
Yes.
That's dangerous. You know that? You feel me?
Yes.
But we
Especially
feel like we're
when you're
doing a
holding
good
it
job.
inside, right?
The thing that we don't talk about.
Because
That's
it's
the
like
thing
the
that
thing
bothers us.
that you're least vulnerable about, right? So, you know, I tell people, I mean, I am open, but I'm open. So I'll share a bunch of things, a lot of things that people think are so personal, but they don't, those things don't affect me. But the things that do affect me, because I hardly talk about it because it makes me feel vulnerable. And I don't want to feel vulnerable.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Right.
So and that comes back to something. No, I ain't trying to psychoanalyze because I ain't no expert, right? I am analyzing me. You said something that was a trigger for me when you talk about safety, like you didn't feel safe for that therapist. Well, I found out that was my real problem with the whole anxiety. I get anxious when I don't feel safe.
Yes.
And where does the feeling of not feeling safe comes from? Then I went to the trauma. Yeah. So I hope that our listeners and our viewers would understand. I hope this awakens something in you with us inviting an expert And there's a reason why I read out the credentials of my panelists, because I want people to know that we take time and do our research, and we bring the best people to you to really help you to find yourself and to become a better version of yourself, people you can identify with and stuff, because not everybody can afford to go for therapy as well. And maybe just listening to this conversation can ignite some form of desire to find affordable therapy. You know, you would realize that you can use your medical insurance and stuff to get therapy if you are so blessed to have it. But it's the point of it is that it's important. Don't feel as though if you go for therapy, you don't have it all together. In fact, you have it all together if you go for therapy. I'm here to tell you that.
Right. But I just want to say something too, because I'm an advocate for it as well. But in our world today, and I want to say this without, I don't want to belittle mental health, wellness. But at the end of the day, just because we talk about it and it's very important and we advise to seek it, doesn't mean that you have to if you don't need it or don't feel to. Because the thing is like, no, but see, I'm going to be on the wrong side of the track.
No, you need to talk the truth.
Personal opinion.
No, you talk the truth, Alana.
Just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean that you need to do it.
That's
so
right.
It's important for you to be self-aware, understand the triggers if
Absolutely.
you need to get it.
Correct.
But also don't just do it because it's the hot thing or that's what everybody's saying you need to do.
Correct. And I agree with that, because now we're not trying to say, hey, well, we are here talking about therapy, go for therapy. No. I'm saying, listen to your body.
Yes.
Look at your triggers. I had a trigger. So that's what sent me there. And it wasn't my first time, but it's my first time in recent time, you know, and I had a trigger, you know, it's like a woman who's becoming more in touch with her body, all parts of it. There's nothing more empowering and liberating than getting to know yourself more. And I feel as though I got to know myself way more. And I like her more.
Very good. As you should.
She's coming out firing. Because she's feeling real good.
Right.
You know, I want to remind our viewers and our listeners to follow us on our respective socials, which they're all in the article on basiapowell.com. Everybody's Instagram is on it. You know, follow us, keep up with us on our respective sites and stuff. And I also want to remind you that this broadcast, every episode of this broadcast is available on Spotify and iTunes, and the video version is available exclusively on basiapowell.com. So don't forget to subscribe, and on YouTube/Basia Powell. Ladies, this has been a blast. I mean, it took a lot for us to bring this broadcast to our people, but we ain't gonna tell them, you know. We did it. We did it. Thank you, Jesus. Right. We did it. Jesus. And I just want to be able to go and get this out as soon as possible. This is the reason we created this broadcast. As women, we have an obligation to uplift each other, not fight each other down, cut each other down, hold each other back because of race, color, skin tone, class. All of that doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters is being able to come together to fight and address our problems collectively. We're better off together. You know, mental health is something that definitely needs us coming together to fight the stigma. We need organizations to be more proactive. We need people to be more proactive so we can pursue mental wellness. You know, and that's what I got from today. So thank you so much for that, Dawn Townsend. We want mental wellness. And I certainly can resonate with that feeling, because that's how I felt after my own journey. We have to remove that idea that something is wrong with us because we're seeking therapy or we're going to a therapist. It means that something is right with us. Treat therapy and prioritize mental wellness as a form of proactivity, as a form of becoming a better version of yourself. You know, the world would be a better place if we all took time to deal with ourselves, because hurting people hurt people. And remember, happy is equal to healthy. That's a wrap. It's your girl, Basia. This was a good one. I'll see you soon. We have a lot more to discuss. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Ladies, Thank you for joining me. It's been a
Thank
blast.
you.
I have to go. I have to go and get my mental wellness on.
Yes, self-care.
Self-care. Got to take care of this
Self-care.
body, honey.
That's right.